Joey with J. Cal.
We are professional wrestling.
I'm building an alliance.
You are tuned into
the absolute top of the mountain, the ultimate professional wrestling.
Alliance-wrestling.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the pre-party.
Let's get that microphone a little bit closer. Welcome to the pre-party. This is J-Cal, and this is a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance and the United Wrestling Network. Don't you know? And it has been a very interesting week, to say the least, ladies and gentlemen. Big Tex is in the house. I see Sweet Vanilla is on Twitch. You guys can join us either Twitch or YouTube. That's youtube.com/TheAllianceBlog. But you're watching already, so you can kind of know that. Or at twitch.tv/TheAllianceBlog. Again, you can follow us on all social medias at TheAllianceBlog, because that's kind of where we're at. And I see a few of you guys are on already. Again, we appreciate you joining us week in and week out. It really makes the week special, unique, fun for us, fun for me, and I'm glad you guys are here. Lamb is in the house. He is on Twitch and YouTube. Lamb, welcome to the party, pal. Again, appreciate everyone being here, being a part of the show. And with that in mind, every week it's getting more and more difficult to find new content to talk about, new things to explore when it comes to the National Wrestling Alliance. We were expecting, I was still expecting that the NWA would be back by now. I honestly thought that the National Wrestling Alliance would be back on YouTube as of right now. I mean, we've gone an entire calendar year without fresh, new NWA content. They stopped filming in January 26th, 2020. That's quite some time. That is quite some time. And to be honest, it's a little disappointing. Now, our friends over at the Pro Wrestling Podcast had an interview with Nick Aldis today. Or actually, it was from a few days ago. Pro Wrestling Zone Podcast. I shared their link on our Facebook page at the Alliance Blog. Make sure you check it out. It's a really good interview. I haven't heard all of it yet, but I did listen to quite a bit of it. And, Nick Aldis, he made some pretty excellent points. The responsibility of the National Wrestling Alliance is not in line with TV rights. It's not in line with, television contracts. And they don't need to create content until the machine is actually in full operation. Meaning, if they're not running live events, well, then they don't need to be on TV. They don't need to have television shows. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And as much as I would like to say that the NWA should be back and should be running at full steam, the fact of the matter is, with the global pandemic, with everything that's preventing the NWA from coming back to regular tapings, it's not surprising. It's not surprising that they haven't been back. It's a little disheartening, but it's not surprising. So again, as I'm sitting there scouring for stuff to talk about, oh, hey, there's Lamb. For those who don't know, Championship Wrestling will be back in production this weekend, so now upcoming episode soon. We're going to get to that, Lamb, but yeah, absolutely. The Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is going back into production, so now you have two options. If you are in concert with United Wrestling Network, there is Championship Wrestling from Memphis and Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, as well as more as it goes. DKM's in the house as well. Jimmy from the LB is here. Welcome. As always, guys, do appreciate you making this part of your week, make part of your entertainment. If you find me entertaining, oh jeez, makes me a little bashful. But like I said, as I was looking for content, looking for things to digest, looking for things to talk about on this show, I found an article from the Sportster, and it was talking about 10 wrestling promotions that will rise and fall in 2020. Number 7 on their list was our National Wrestling Alliance. Now, basically, the article goes like this. On October the 5th, 2020, Ian Goodwill of the Sportster predicted the fall of the NWA by writing, "The thing about the NWA is that it never really permanently falls. It fades into the background for a while, yet it seems to find a way to make to make its way to a relative state of prominence again. But the current version of the NWA called Power will fail in the next few years, if it even takes that long. Wow. That guy kind of hit the nail right on the head. Now, that article was written in January 5th, 2020, long before we knew the dangers of this global pandemic that we're dealing with, long before we knew how big COVID-19 really was, at least in this country. And for this guy to kind of come out at that point and say that the NWA was going to fail, I mean, he might have been onto something. Now, he kind of went on to say that the company had some solid talent, but it lacks in a huge star that everyone tunes in for. But its biggest problem is the logo that makes it look like the show is called Power. Those extra 2 letters make it seem like it's a name for a weird dating app. Well, I disagree with Mr. Goodwillie. I disagree with the idea that the NWA doesn't have a big star, because that couldn't be further from the truth. The NWA has the biggest star in professional wrestling week in and week out, and that would be this. The 10 pounds of leather and gold, synonymous with wrestling excellence. Lou Thesz, George Hackenschmidt, Gene Kiniski, Buddy Rogers, Harley Race, Jerry Briscoe, Jack Briscoe. Man, I always get my Briscoes mixed up. Terry Funk, Dory Funk. The list keeps going, right? Did I say Harley Race already? Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair. You know, the names, they just keep coming, right? Dan Severn, Adam Pearce, AJ Styles, Jeff Jarrett, Ron the Truth Killings, Sabu. And most recently, the national treasure, Nick Aldis. All of these men at their given time represented the history, the legacy, the tradition of a wrestling organization that's 72 years old. No other wrestling promotion in the United States can say this, that they've been around since 1948. So when you talk about the biggest stars in professional wrestling, you have to talk about that 10 pounds of gold. And for anyone who wants to chastise that title belt or to devalue it, you have to remember that the 10 pounds of gold and its brothers who represented the NWA represented that history that nobody can touch, and is celebrated by those who are in power these days, like Triple H. He still has a 10 pounds of gold in his office. Hell, the current authority figure on WWE programming is a former world's heavyweight champion, 5-time champion Adam Pearce. So, again, Ian Goodwillie of the Sportster, he did predict the rise and, well, predicted the fall of the NWA. But is that a permanent fall, or is this a temporary fall? Is this in contention with the promotion just failing? Or is this the byproduct of a global pandemic that has prevented the NWA from running? As we were talking about earlier with our man Nick Aldis, I mean, he had some interesting things to say on the podcast today. Excuse me, not today, but on the podcast with the Pro WrestleZone podcast. One of the things that he explained was that, you know, there is going to be some positive news coming soon for the NWA, but they were unable to pivot. I mean that wasn't Nick Aldis's words, but basically he said that the NWA didn't have those financial obligations like the WWE has, or like Impact Wrestling or New Japan Pro Wrestling. They're not tied to television deals like AEW or like Ring of Honor. That because they're an entity into themselves, they don't have responsibilities to get out there and move until there's something to move for. Now, one of the things that I disagree with is that Nick said that they don't make content to just make content, and I feel like that is a huge fail, not only in execution but in philosophy for the NWA, because by not making content, people forget, and when you're out of the spotlight, people tend to forget, and when you don't do anything worthwhile, people tend to forget. And in an audience, in a marketplace that is so consumed with competition, with other rival wrestling promotions doing similar things or the exact same thing, it's hard to distinguish yourself. And when you have the momentum that they had through the Power episodes, now we got to remember, and I said this last week too, those television tapings literally were about 3 or 4 months worth of tapings, which really amounted to about 7 or 8 days. I didn't do the exact math, but the first taping episode was September 30th and October 1st. Those were your first 2 days of taping, and those took the show from October to basically January. They did more tapings in January, did more tapings in December, and the content just kept going. It just kept going till about March. But that's it. That's the window that the NWA had created. And the other interesting thing that Nick Aldis said in that interview with the Pro Wrestling Zone podcast, which you can find on Spotify, that's where I listen to him, just say, hey, social media, or hey, digital assistant, play the Pro Wrestling Zone podcast on Spotify. They'll find it for you. But it's interesting to me that when Nick Aldis said that the company, they really have been in control of this version of the NWA since 2017, so for about 3 years. And in 3 years' time, they were able to make multiple pay-per-views. They had established the brand again, in a weird wrestling climate where there are so many other promotions coming and going. MLW is still around, is still here. Pro Wrestling Guerrilla California, Ring of Honor, all up and down the Eastern Seaboard. New Japan Pro Wrestling came to the United States, and the NWA still managed a way to be significant amongst all those promotions, including Impact, AEW, WWE, and so it kind of, the ramifications of them being able to do so much in such a short amount of time should be celebrated. Now remember, they were going to have a pay-per-view, Crockett Cup 2020, and they were basically sold out. And this was a smaller sized arena show, not some bingo hall, not some high school gymnasium. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but they were taking the next bigger steps. They were working with Ring of Honor. They were working with New Japan Pro Wrestling. They were working with CMLL. So they were kind of doing all this stuff that AEW gets celebrated for, on a much smaller scale, of course. And so them not getting to produce the content, and I see that DKM said, well, Carneyland sucked, so it needs to be good content. And you're absolutely right. We want wrestling, and that was proven so much and so quickly and so easily when you turned on the YouTube channel for the NWA, and you could see how well Shockwave did in comparison to what they did with Carneyland. Nothing that Carneyland did even touched what Shockwave was able to do, and all it was just producing wrestling. In fact, it was wrestling that a lot of people already paid for. A lot of people already watched with Primetime Live. So that begs the question, the NWA is still here. Will the audience still be here when they come back? Now, like I said, Nick Aldis said that there should be some news in the next couple of weeks. I heard from a little birdie that the NWA would have an announcement maybe this week or next week. Nothing has quite come to fruition yet. And I still, I don't want to get things twisted. This is still very much a pro NWA podcast, live stream, website, social media accounts, whatever you want to call it. We're still very much pro NWA, but we do call a spade, and when we see a brand and a product that we love, that we enjoy, fail to pivot, we're gonna call that out. And when we see talent not being used or utilized or showcasing that 10 pounds of gold, that brand, that promotion that we have followed so closely for so long. We're gonna call it out. But it's just a matter of time for the NWA. I do believe they'll be back sooner than later. I do believe they're going to run events, run shows, but that all remains to be seen. No formal announcement has been made. On one group chat that I was involved with, somebody suggested, did we think that the NWA would return, with Crockett Cup 2021? Now, Crockett Cup 2021 is an interesting idea, and we'll get more to that in a minute. Let's read some more of your comments, because I see you guys are posting early and often, and I do appreciate that. We try to get to all the comments. Again, what you guys have to say matters. I see DKM say, boo, working with others. I think DKM means he doesn't want to see the NWA working with Ring of Honor or working with New Japan or working with CMLL. And again, I think the NWA needs to stand on its own as well, but I'm not against them forging relationships with other wrestling promotions as long as that they're taking care of what's important, which is the 10 pounds of gold, the roster of the NWA, that the show needs to grow and to evolve. And if that means bringing in a competitor or 2 or 3 from a rival promotion to help establish your audience, I'm not against that, but I'd rather see those stars come from within the NWA. And NWA Gold is in the house. Big Tim. Tim, how are you? Dave Scooby says, hopefully with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood taping again, Primetime Live won't be far behind. There's a lot of news coming from the United Wrestling Network that y'all need to pay attention to and stay tuned for. Primetime Live, I do have on authority, will return. We're not exactly sure when yet. You have to remember, too, that we're still in the middle of a global pandemic. And unlike Atlanta, Georgia, or some of the other states, here in California, it is still illegal to have a gathering of more than 50 people. More so, producing live wrestling events has kind of fallen on the wayside. Marquez stopped Primetime Live mostly because we didn't know where the state of California was going to be in terms of COVID-19, in terms of lockdown, in terms of all of those things, all the external factors. The show itself, I know for a fact, I've spoken to them, it will return. They just don't know exactly when yet. So stay tuned. Jimmy from the LB says, we definitely want more content, and as DKM points out, preferably good content. I mean, I think that goes without saying, right? Because we're all a fan of this. We all want to see more good wrestling. Good wrestling is the key. We don't want Carneyland. We don't want silly, stupid stuff. I was just speaking with DKM offline, and we were talking about Major League Wrestling. And for a minute there, Major League Wrestling was all the rave. And I kept hearing people talk about, the Contra Unit and Jacob Fatu, Hammerstone, the Von Erich boys. And that show had received a lot of positive praise. But now people aren't as enthusiastic about that product. NWA, Ring of Honor was struggling towards the start of the pandemic, and it was becoming a place where people really weren't talking about what was going on in the Ring of Honor. But then with the Pure Wrestling Tournament, along with good fundamental wrestling and wrestling production, Ring of Honor has become one of those can't miss TV shows. You can watch that on Fight TV, or if you're in a Sinclair network, you could watch Ring of Honor on Sinclair Broadcasting. So DKM says he still loves the wrestlers, he just says the booking sucks. Well, I don't know who books for MLW, but I'm not a huge fan of MLW's talent. I love Hammerstone. I think he's great. The Von Erich boys are always intriguing to me. That family lineage, they're a tag team that I wish was available for the NWA. Jacob Fatu, come on. That guy, I saw him at a Rikishi show. I call it a Rikishi show. It was his promotion out here in California. I can't even remember the name of that place. But they did a wrestle fair where they had like vendors come in selling lucha libre masks. They had autograph signings from like the Samoan dynasty. I'm talking about Rikishi, Rocky Johnson, God rest his soul when he was still alive. The Tongan Kid. There was a lot of the that Samoan family that was in person, and Jacob Fatu was one of the gentlemen there. And just watching him in the ring, and this is before he became MLW World Champion, he was just a real step above most of the other guys in the ring. You could tell that he has star potential, and is a real great wrestler. We'll see, how his career continues to unfold, but of course, it was really fun watching him and some of the other other members of that Samoan dynasty. Excuse me. You know what? I need some water too. So, it was brought to my attention. Sorry, I'm changing gears here a little bit. I want to make sure that I address this on this podcast because it was brought to our attention over the weekend that there is a Facebook fan page who, I guess, I don't know if it's called make-believe. I don't know if they're role-playing or if this was just somebody who thought that they were somehow connected and not really. But there's a group on Facebook who's, I don't even know the exact address, but they identified themselves as NWA Power, kind of giving the illusion that they were connected to the brand. But they are not connected to the brand. They are not connected in any way to the National Wrestling Alliance. And normally I appreciate when people share my content. I like it when you guys share the podcast, like, comment, subscribe. Those are all great. When you share it on social media, that's great. This particular platform, this Facebook fan page, put my website as the link in their profile, which again, normally I don't have a problem with, because honestly, let's talk business for a second. Every time someone comes to my website generates money. It generates revenue. I make money from you guys visiting the website. I'm not getting rich. Don't get it twisted. It's almost nothing, but every little penny helps, right? So I'm flattered when someone wants to link to my website or share my content. But that wasn't this. They didn't actually share any of my content. They just had that link to my website. They didn't share any of the posts that I had written or DKM had written or any of the other content creators who have worked with us in the past. They didn't bring anything to the table more than just saying that they were connected to us. So again, that's normally not even a problem for me, but then they started making posts on their platform that kind of confused the audience, and they made it sound like they were NWA Power or they were connected to the National Wrestling Alliance, which they are not. And then they continue to kind of have this persona where they literally thanked the fans for being a part of the show, and it kind of made it sound like that the Power was getting closed. And that's not true. And that's not something we've preached on this platform. It's not something that I've mentioned in the podcast. I've been a very firm supporter for the NWA. I've always said, even going back to March when it first shut down live tapings, when the NWA kind of closed up for a bit, I kept saying they will be back. That has been the constant message on the show. They will be back. The NWA will be back. So it was kind of a little deflating to hear that somebody who tried to associate with my brand proclaimed the NWA dead, proclaimed the NWA closed. That's not the message that we have used this entire time. In fact, I will go as far to say is that I've been extremely critical of the National Wrestling Alliance. I've been extremely critical of Nick Aldis, but not once have I said that the NWA would not return, and not once have I said that Nick Aldis is a bad champion. What's up, Willie? Welcome to the show. It's actually the exact opposite. I've been very proactive, pro NWA. I've been very pro Nick Aldis, but critical as well. See, that's the thing about being an analyst versus being a fan, is that an analyst can look at both sides and see the pros and cons, where a fan typically just sees their point of view. We try to have both sides. And when there's a lot of other content creators who will not point out the negatives, I'm not afraid to stray from that. But with that being said, just because I'm being critical doesn't mean I don't like. I champion the National Wrestling Alliance. I've championed it very, very hard for the last 13 years. I'm not going to stop anytime soon. There's Jason Newsom. Hey, Jason Newsom, you haven't been around in a while. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for popping in. Willie is also here. Willie, what is up? I'm so happy to see familiar faces. So the point I'm trying to get at is, even though I've been critical of the NWA, even though I've been critical of Nick Aldis, never once have I said that they were done, that this was a waste of time. We've celebrated the National Wrestling Alliance here on this podcast, and as much crap as I've said about Nick Aldis, I still celebrate him as a world's heavyweight champion, and probably the best world's heavyweight champion of the modern era. I don't even think that there's someone out there right now that could do the job that I know he is capable of doing. My points of his criticism has always been, I just wanted to see more. Just wanted more from the champion. Just wanted to see more from this guy, right? Yeah, that guy. So again, just to clear up the misconceptions, to clear up the confusion, no, we don't think the NWA is disappearing. We don't think that the show's coming to conclusion. If anything, I feel like this show is headed back. I think they're coming back sooner than later. I think the NWA will be producing live events soon. Whether they have an audience or not, I'm unsure of that. I don't know for sure. But I do hope to see the NWA back sooner than later. I do hope that an audience can safely get to those shows soon. You know, if you're listening to the the political commentary, if you're listening to people talking about it, it just seems that the NWA should be there momentarily, but they aren't yet. Now, guys, I'm sorry. I normally don't do this, but I have an emergency I have to take care of just a second. Bear with me for just a moment, please. And hold on just a second. Son of a bitch. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Audio's back, apparently. Man. So let me start from that all over again. The champion that we would like to see the most is that Trevor Murdoch. Sorry, guys. New microphone has this ability to mute, but the problem is if you don't unmute it, it's still muted. So you guys all laugh at me. That's all right. So the champion that I would like to see when the NWA returns, and I'm really excited to see, is Trevor Murdoch. Now, the maturation process of Trevor Murdoch, you either watched him in the WWE, maybe you knew of him in WLW or working with Pro Wrestling Noah. My first experiences with Trevor Murdoch were Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, where he and Lance Cade teamed up, and we kind of felt back then that they might become a big threat to the NWA tag team titles. Of course, that never came into fruition. Cade and Murdoch had won multiple WWE tag team titles, but it wasn't until Trevor Murdoch joined the National Wrestling Alliance in 2019 that he became a contender for an NWA Singles Championship. And by defeating Aaron Stevens last year on the Primetime Live pay-per-view series, he won the NWA National Championship. With that being said, that the National Championship is one of these titles that I feel is going to be pivotal for the NWA going forward. Along with the television title, these championship belts will help establish the NWA and what they're efforting to produce. So with that being said, I can't wait to see Trevor Murdoch return to the NWA to defend that National Heavyweight Championship. Now that the lineage of that title with the new NWA goes back to Willie Mack, who won the title at the NWA 70th anniversary show. He outlasted 3 other men in a what do you call that? It was an elimination style match where he faced Sam Shaw, where he faced Sam Shaw in the finals of that match to win the title. He defended the title in Championship Wrestling from Arizona. He defended the title in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And his title reign would be short because by the Crockett Cup, he would lose to Colt Boom Boom Cabana. Colt Cabana would have that national championship. Then he would lose his title to James Storm during a Ring of Honor dark match. James Storm would walk into Primetime Live as the national champion, but eventually would lose the title back to Colt Cabana, who then would lose the title to Aaron Stevens in a 3-way match along with Ricky Starks. And of course, Aaron Stevens would lose that title Primetime Live to Trevor Murdoch. The history of the national championship, even in a short interim from the Billy Corgan Lightning One era of the NWA, held great significance and had been worn by many great champions. But I want to know, who do you guys think will be the next challenge for Trevor Murdoch? This is where I'm tagging you guys in. Tell me who you think should be the guy to challenge Trevor Murdoch. I'll let you know who I think. And that's because even right now that we have this limited roster, there are several guys that could be a great challenge to Trevor Murdoch in that national championship. But I think one stands above them all, and I think it fits with the storyline, and I think it fits with it fits in with what the NWA is doing. And I'm sorry I got distracted there. Lamb just brought something up, and I will go ahead and speak to that. He said that Willie Mack defeating Colt Cabana, that title change was a surprise because there were huge plans for Mack. The One Nation Series show, like the 10 Pounds of Gold. Yeah, I mean, that was supposed to be a really big deal, and it never came to fruition. And it was disappointing. In fact, there was a lot more to it than that. There was some contract disputes with AAA, who was the parent company of Lucha Underground, where Willie Mack had signed a contract and was supposedly still under contract to AAA, but then signed with Impact Wrestling. So there's kind of some shenanigans involved, some shit-cannery, if you will. And eventually, Willie Mack did sign with AAA, or signed with Impact, and so we never got that rematch with Colt Cabana, which a lot of us expected at the time. Now, the person that I would like to see challenge Trevor Murdoch is stablemate to the world's heavyweight champion, and I'm talking about Bram, Thomas Latimer. Now, Latimer held the distinction of becoming the tag team champions when NWA Power started. Remember, he and Royce Isaacs walked into Power as the NWA Tag Team Champions, lost the titles to the Rock and Roll Express, who then would end up losing those titles in a triple threat match to James Storm and Eli Drake, who then lost last year to JR Kratos and Aaron Stevens. But Thomas Latimer is one of these guys who is severely underutilized. And being Nick Aldis's wingman is one thing, but let's not forget the match that he had with Trevor Murdoch that was absolutely brutal, stiff as heck. And I think Trevor Murdoch by design, he's a babyface. So who better to feud with Trevor Murdoch than one of the meanest, nastiest guys on the roster? And again, we're talking about Thomas Latimer. Now, if he's still under contract with the NWA when the show returns, or if he comes back to the NWA, all that remains to be seen. But I think that would be a great pairing. Of course, we had a preview of that match back on Power, back in the second season of Power, the qualifications for the TV title match. And I think that, again, Thomas Latimer versus Trevor Murdoch would be a hell of a barn burner. That's what I meant to say. Let's see which ones that you guys have. DKM says the King Fat Boy Pablo Esco. Now, I for one would love to see that match as well. However, we don't exactly know if United Wrestling Network and talent from the United Wrestling Network will be involved with the NWA. One can assume that they're not really under contract to United Wrestling Network. They're not really under contract with the NWA. They could probably have this cross-promotional platform. I don't know if that's going to happen, but Pablo Esco, definitely, I agree with DK, and we actually tried to get that tweet going when Primetime Live was still on the air, that we wanted to see those two bad boys show up and show down. Pablo Esco challenging Trevor Murdoch. I still think that match would be pretty brutal. We've seen Pablo Esco as a part of the Bodega teaming with Danny Limelight on United Wrestling Network, Primetime Live, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And I'm telling you, King Fat Boy is not someone to be trifled with. He's not someone that you're going to take for granted. So putting him in a match with a guy like Trevor Murdoch, just two hosses that can go. Anthony Idol of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, or Watts, or Pablo Esco. Again, just spoke to Pablo Esco, so let's talk about Anthony Idol, the Neon Phenomenon. He's held regional titles all over Southern California, including the SoCal Pro Heavyweight Championship, the EWF Americas Championship, and he is absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the guys that I think the NWA could definitely use. Now, he's a little over the top, he's a little campy, but I think that kind of works. I think that works with the National Wrestling Alliance. We saw that with the Question Mark. We saw that with Austin Idol's Kayfabe Cocktails. So I don't see that he would not fit in. So again, him being a challenge for Trevor Murdoch, one of the distinctions that Anthony Idol has is a lot of what actually Nick Aldis has mentioned in the past. The design, the goal, the measurements. What am I trying to say here? The boxes that Anthony Idol checks off for body, size, look, appearance fit in with what the NWA is looking for. They're not looking for, they're not looking for the D-Man Parkers of the world. They're not looking for the Caleb Conleys of the world. They're looking for guys who are heavyweights. They're looking for guys who have a physique or a special look. They're looking for guys who are going to make, no pun intended, an impact on the show. Anthony Idol has the gift of gab. He has a good, credible stature and size that I think the NWA audience would look forward to. And so I think maybe he would be the one. Are you guys saying no sound? Jason Newsom, you're saying no sound? Can you guys hear me? Someone say something. Tell me if you can hear me. All right, I can hear it on my phone. Okay. All right. So again, where was I? Anthony Idol. Yeah, good choice. I like Anthony Idol. Also, Lamb mentions Watts. I think Watts is a slam dunk, and I hope Watts is a part of the NWA going forward because, number one, he brings something different to the table. His look, his appearance. I mean, so much about Watts is different than what you see typically on an NWA program. I think the match that he had with Eli Drake proves that he could hang with the big boys when he was on Primetime Live. So absolutely, I think he would be good on the show. I think he would add something to the show. And against Trevor Murdoch, I mean, again, Murdoch's a big boy, but so is Eric Watts, and I think that would be a great showdown. I see some more names. Let me get the drink here. You said that Terry had a good name. I don't see Terry's post. Terry, who do you think? Oh, Charlie Haas. Yes, absolutely. Now, Charlie Haas wrestles currently for SWE Fury. Charlie Haas is a former NWA Texas heavyweight champion. There were plans for him to become North American champion. For whatever reason, never really came to fruition. But Charlie Haas is a guy who, even at his advanced age, and I'm not saying he's ancient, but he's older than most guys still wrestling. I think he's 48 years old. Still looks good. And I mean, we're talking about Tim Storm just celebrated his 56th birthday. Charlie Haas is a guy that could still go. Hey, Jeff Capo's in the house. Welcome to the show, Jeff. If Charlie Haas is available to the NWA, he is certainly somebody I would love for them to pick up. Absolutely, 100%. I think he would bring a lot to the show. I think he would add some value, definitely. And challenging Trevor Murdoch, I mean, that's the world's greatest tag team versus Cade and Murdoch. I mean, that would be very interesting and a good match I'd like to see. Willie brought up Watts, absolutely. Dave Scooby brings up Tim Storm. He can't challenge Aldis, so why not go after Murdoch and get that national title? Absolutely. And the crazy thing is that it's kind of forcing the hand of the NWA. If Tim Storm comes in and wins that national championship, the national champion is usually a top contender for the world's heavyweight championship. Only how long can you deny Tim Storm an opportunity to wrestle Nick Aldis for that 10 pounds of gold if he's holding the national championship? And to me, it wouldn't be very long. And Jimmy from the LB says, just recently watched the first few 10 pounds of gold episodes. I agree with you, Dave. Storm versus Murdoch. I mean, it would be a fun match for sure. Willie brings up Jordan Clearwater. Again, Jordan Clearwater recently was the Hollywood Heritage Championship, held the title briefly before losing it to Ricky Slade. I like Jordan Clearwater quite a bit. I know he's still really young, and I still know he has a lot to develop. Putting him into a feud with somebody like Trevor Murdoch, I mean, it's going to be brutal. It's going to be stiff, but I think at the end of the day, Jordan Clearwater becomes a better wrestler for it. So I really think that would be a compelling and interesting example of someone who could challenge Trevor Murdoch for that national heavyweight championship. As I go down the list more and more, I see Lamb says Watts challenged Pierce for the 10 pounds of gold. For those who didn't know. Yeah, and that's the thing. If you've been watching Championship Wrestling from Hollywood for a long time, Watts had challenged Pierce. So they were former stablemates for a brief time, but they also wrestled each other. And I remember being in that crowd, in that audience that night that Watts and Pierce were in the ring together. My wife was with me, who was then my girlfriend, and we saw a murder bomb from Watts onto Pierce, and we kind of thought Pierce was going to die. I thought Pierce was dead. So, and Jeff Capo's here. For you guys who don't know who Jeff Capo is, first of all, shame on you. Secondly, Jeff Capo has been a part of the NWA in the past. He refereed many world championship matches, many North American title matches, many British Commonwealth matches. Jeffrey Capo was more or less, in my opinion, the head official of the NWA during the not Bruce Start, but the why am I drawing a blank on names? Wow, I can't think right now. For the pro wrestling organization, we'll just say that he he refereed in Virginia. He refereed at some of the anniversary shows. Jeffrey Capo is a guy that needs to be celebrated with the rich history and tradition of the National Wrestling Alliance. Someone I respect quite a bit, so it kind of means a lot for me for him to be here. And he corrected me, the Bob Trobich era. I don't know why I couldn't think of Bob's name. Just kind of put me on the spot, I guess. Jimmy is a big Tim Storm fan. DKM is not a big Ricky Slade fan. DKM says Championship Wrestling from Hollywood likes smaller guys. And you know what it is, DKM? It's not that Championship Wrestling from Hollywood likes smaller guys. It's just that they don't have a lot of larger guys available. If you look at the Southern California wrestling scene, there are very few big guys. It's just what it is. If you go to any wrestling show in Southern California, very rarely will you see guys over 6 feet. Most of the guys are about my size. And that's, 5'8", 5'9", 200 pounds at the most. I know I'm more than 200 pounds. Don't judge me, okay? Don't judge me. Lamb got me. I did say Ricky. I meant Richie. My bad. But that's part of the problem. That's the geographically, man, I can't talk today. Geographically, Southern California, for whatever reason, most of the wrestlers aren't big. And even when you look at somebody like Pablo Esco, he's a big guy, but he isn't very tall. He isn't like 6'3". He's maybe 6 foot at the most. And so I do want to say that. Let's see. NWA Gold says Jeff is awesome. I agree with that. Jimmy in the LB says, Jeff, I'm just an ignorant noob. Apologies and welcome. Okay. Jeff says, happy to have been a part of the NWA from 2000 to 2008. Worked with Bob Trobich, Dave Marquez, and many others. And DKM says 150 pounds. I think you mean 150 pounds. Yeah. Look, the guys aren't very big. That's just the fact of the matter. And the biggest stars that have come out of Southern California, Rocky Romero, junior heavyweight. Scorpio Sky, junior heavyweight. Adam Pearce, he doesn't really come from this area. He came from Chicago. He's a transport. But even like modern day Hollywood heritage champions, Bad Dude Tito, 6 foot, maybe 220 pounds, 210 pounds. A bigger guy, but still not super heavyweight size guys. Ricky Mandel wasn't very big in terms of weight. He was about 6 foot, 200 pounds, maybe closer to 160 pounds, 180 pounds. So I get what you're saying, DKM, but it's just, they can only use the guys that are available, right? It's not like they can truck people in from Texas. And speaking of Texas, the guys they are bringing in from Texas are 5'4". Freaking what's that guy's name? And the DKM says they had Johnny Yuma. Well, they also had Peter Avalon, and he was the biggest man in the NWA for a little bit. So, okay, let me get a drink here. Willie Bowen says Slice Boogie. He wished that Brian Cage was with UPN. I think you mean UWN Primetime Live. NWA Power. Yeah. And Jeff Capo brings out the NWA never had a lot of the super heavyweights. But that's kind of changing, right? Because if you look up and down that Power roster, and I know it's changed quite significantly, but if we go from last year's roster to the roster that broke into 2020, super heavyweights, no, but heavyweights, yes. They had, of course, Nick Aldis, Thomas Latimer, Trevor Murdoch, Eddie Kingston. I would say Homicide's probably closer to junior heavyweight. The Bruisers, the Beer City Bruiser, and I guess they were called the Bodyguards, or the Bouncers. Both those guys were very, very big dudes. Colt Cabana is a legit heavyweight. Eli Drake is a legit heavyweight. James Storm was a legit heavyweight. Tim Storm. And the list kind of goes on and on. There's very few actual junior heavyweights on that roster. Aaron Stevens is a heavyweight. The Question Mark was a heavyweight. The Dawsons, thank you, Lamb. Again, they were heavyweights. Jason saying he's having audio issues. I'm sorry, Jason. Everyone else seems to hear, so I don't know what to tell you, brother. Let's see. And then Jeff Capo points out that the WWF has always had bigger heavyweights, and that's true. And the NWA has had its fair share of heavyweights in the past. Again, but the modern day NWA, we really don't know what it's going to look like, right? Because when they come back to the show, when they get back to taping Power again, we don't know who exactly is going to be on that roster. I think it's safe to assume that Tim Storm's going to be there. I think it's safe to assume that Thomas Latimer's going to be there. I'm pretty sure that Trevor Murdoch and Elijah Burke will all be there, along with Aaron Stevens and J.R. Kratos. Of course, Nick Aldis will be there. But I don't know who else is going to be there as a part of that show. But, that's what Billy Corgan wants. Is he wants guys that fit that mold. He wants heavyweights. He wants guys that don't look like your neighbors. I know for whatever reason they're not a big fan of the Young Bucks. They're not a big fan of the choreographed style of wrestling. I don't think you're going to see Ricochet end up on an episode of NWA Power. Sorry, I lost my place there. But having these guys, having these heavyweights show up, I think is a big deal. And you're going to see more and more, I think, of those type of wrestlers show up in the NWA. Dave Scooby says possibly have Doug Williams join Strictly Business and then challenge Aldis down the road. Now, that would be pretty cool. The history between Doug Williams and Nick Aldis, if you guys are a fan of Impact Wrestling, when Magnus showed up, I mean, he was under the tutelage of Doug Williams. They were a tag team, so that would be fun. Willie Bowen says Royce Isaacs was a legitimate heavyweight. I mean, Royce is a big dude, but still by comparison, he's a lot smaller than some of the guys we were talking about. Jeff Capo says a guy like JD Drake would be great fit for the NWA. That was actually brought up on the This Is Pro Wrestling, their Discord forum. If you guys are on Discord, check out This Is Pro Wrestling. That's Gary Horn, that's Dr. Robert Stinson, that's Hey It's Will, that's their forum. And that was actually brought up that JD Drake would be a good fit for the NWA. One of the guys that recently has kind of disappeared off of social media would be... oh gosh, I'm losing my mind here. We'll just skip that. And then Lamb brings up Bad Dude Tito versus Nick Aldis 2 for the NWA World Heavyweight title would be nice. I mean, the Wolf Zaddies should be a good fit for the NWA if they choose to go with the tag team, adding more tag teams. In fact, that was the next topic we're going to, is that the National Wrestling Alliance, when it comes back, I mean, the last event we were supposed to have, the last show we were supposed to see was supposed to be the Crockett Cup. We were supposed to see the Crockett Cup 2020. It was going to be Nick Aldis versus Marty Scurll. Now, that match probably won't happen. We were supposed to see the tag team champions joining the Crockett Cup. We were supposed to potentially see the Villains and a lot of other... The screen on Twitch is black? Screen on Twitch is black? I don't know why the screen on Twitch would be black. Sorry, guys. I apologize for pausing in the action here. Screen is black. How many wrong ways can I spell Twitch? So again, going back to what we were saying here, the screen is black. No, there it is. So again, going back to what we were saying here. Okay. There it is. So going back to what we were saying is, again, so Crockett Cup was supposed to be the next event. Of course, the next event hasn't showed up yet. So, do you think that the NWA should come back with the Crockett Cup? Do you think it should come back with NWA Power? What show do you think should come back next? And what tag teams do you think would make a good fit for the NWA? We'll talk more about that next week because, guys, we're out of time. It's already been an hour, and we're going to have to wrap things up because, honestly, I've got some work stuff coming up. So I do appreciate you guys checking this show out week in and week out. Jeff, welcome to the show. If you'd like to come back next week, we'd love to have you be a part of it and be a part of the show and interact with the folks on here. I am going to end the show a little bit earlier today. Keep those names, those tag teams that you guys are writing down, keep those in your head, keep those written down. We're going to talk about that next week. The tag teams we want to see join the NWA when it returns. Hopefully there'll be some news regarding the return of the National Wrestling Alliance and power to YouTube or whatever distribution method it's going to find. If you guys would like to buy the merchandise, you can find these shirts on Amazon, also on our merch store through Streamlabs. The link is on alliance-wrestling.com. Again, that's your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. Make sure you check that out. And again, we're on all social medias at TheAllianceBlog. You can interact with us there. TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, all that good stuff. And so that's going to do it for us. Of course, I always like to end the show with this quote right here, and that is, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and what is essentially your own. Until next time, guys, we'll see you at the matches. Good night.